Let's wake her up. Efficiency stabilized at 93%, exact projection.
Impressive.
Janitor thinks he can fix this. Victoria Sterling's voice sliced through the air like a blade wrapped in diamonds. Her tone dripped with disgust as she gestured toward the sparking engine that sat lifeless on the polished mahogany table. The overhead lights shimmered against the chrome casing, throwing fractured reflections across the boardroom's glass walls. Her diamond bracelet flashed under the lights as she dramatically covered her nose. "God," she sneered, "you even smell like motor oil." Jamal Washington froze in the doorway, trash bags clutched in his calloused hands, his work boots leaving faint smudges on the pristine marble floor. 24 executives turned their heads in unison, their designer suits whispering as they shifted. Their eyes, sharp and judgmental, swept over Jamal as if he were a stain that had somehow escaped the janitor's mop. Victoria rose from her leather chair, the red soles of her Louis Vuitton heels clicking against the marble like gunfire. Her movements were precise, deliberate, the choreography of a woman used to commanding fear. She walked toward Jamal, her perfume, expensive, cold, and sharp, mixing with the sterile scent of ozone from the malfunctioning engine. "Here's the deal, maintenance boy." Her words dripped acid. "Fix this $2 million engine that MIT engineers couldn't repair." She leaned in closer, her icy eyes locking on his. "And I'll marry you right here." Gasps echoed through the boardroom. A few of the younger analysts glanced at each other, unsure whether to laugh or recoil. Victoria straightened, her chin-high power radiating from every inch of her tailored charcoal suit. "When you fail, and you will, security will escort you out, permanently." Then she snapped her fingers inches from his face. The sound cracked through the silence like a whip. Jamal's knuckles tightened around the trash bags. He said nothing. His silence wasn't weakness, it was armor. Years of swallowing pride in rooms that mistook humility for incompetence had taught him that words were wasted on people who didn't want to listen. Across the table, the company's prized creation sat dormant. A masterpiece of artificial intelligence and mechanical precision, it was supposed to power tech Vanguard Industries' new line of autonomous delivery trucks, a revolution 3 years in the making. 47 patents, 93% theoretical efficiency, billions in projected revenue. Now, it was nothing more than an expensive paperweight. For 6 long weeks, the engine had mocked the world's brightest minds. It would hum to life, run for exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds, then shut down with a cryptic message. Harmonic disruption detected. 3 engineering teams, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, had failed. 67 diagnostic tests, millions of dollars spent, endless meetings, still nothing. Victoria's patience had eroded into fury. Each day, she stalked the marble halls like a storm trapped in human form, heels clicking, voice rising, temper flaring. Coffee cups multiplied across conference tables, fossilized reminders of sleepless nights and unraveling sanity. $67 million, she screamed during Tuesday's crisis meeting, her voice ricocheting off the glass walls. "That's what we lose if this engine doesn't work by Friday. 67 million. That's our expansion into New York, Dallas, and San Francisco gone." Her engineers sat in silent misery, expensive watches on trembling wrists, bloodshot eyes behind designer glasses, each one armed with a resume that boasted brilliance, yet none could explain why the company's crown jewel refused to work. Jamal listened from the hallway, sweeping floors no one noticed. But his mind, sharp as the day he'd graduated from community college with honors in mechanical engineering, couldn't stop racing. He'd studied the blueprints after hours, when executives had gone home and the hum of ambition gave way to the quiet rhythm of his mop. He'd seen it, the mismatch between metric and imperial units, a subtle discord hidden in the calibration code, a problem invisible to eyes that had forgotten how to listen. But what did that matter? He was invisible here. Officially, his badge read technical consultant. In reality, he emptied trash cans, mopped floors, refilled water pitchers. His diploma hung in a cheap frame in his one-room apartment, a reminder of dreams traded for chemo bills. He'd chosen sacrifice over success. When his mother's cancer struck, tuition money turned into hospital payments. While his classmates built careers, he built resilience. For 3 years, he had moved silently through Tech Vanguard's sterile corridors, witness to the arrogance of geniuses who mistook degrees for wisdom. And Victoria Sterling, self-made queen of Silicon Valley, was the worst of them all. At 38, she was a legend and a warning, a visionary with a diamond-hard heart. Her empire, built on precision and fear, stretched 40 stories into the sky, a glass monument to ambition. But power had made her cruel. To her, people were either assets or liabilities, and Jamal, he was just a name on a payroll sheet. Emails whispered the truth, executives mocking him in private threads, HR laughing emojis under jokes about his vocabulary. She used him in presentations as proof of her diverse hearing initiative, calling him our maintenance success story. The tone always said charity, never respect. Still, he endured, because endurance was survival. On Wednesday morning, a fleet of black Mercedes sedans arrived like a funeral procession. The German investors had come. Among them, Klaus Müller, CEO of Autotech Bavaria, known for his ruthless eye for detail. And beside him, Dr. Alina Rodriguez, the Tesla legend who held 37 patents and could spot engineering flaws faster than most people could blink. Their presence turned the upcoming demonstration into a trial by fire. The champagne had already been ordered, press releases drafted. The world waited for a triumph that was nowhere in sight. Instead, disaster struck. The final pre-demo test ended in smoke and chaos. The engine hissed, sparked, and filled the boardroom with a choking cloud. The fire suppression system activated, dousing engineers and equipment alike. Laptops short-circuited. The smell of burnt circuitry clung to the air. Victoria's composure cracked. Mascara smudged. Voice frayed. By noon, she'd locked herself in the executive restroom, her screams muffled behind marble walls. By afternoon, she called an emergency meeting in the auditorium. 200 employees assembled, tired, nervous, desperate. The German investors sat in the front row, faces unreadable. Victoria stepped up to the podium, her heels echoing like gavel strikes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we face our greatest challenge. Our revolutionary engine, the heart of our company, remains non-operational. Our engineering teams have exhausted every conventional solution." A heavy pause. Then, the sentence that sucked the air from the room. "Effective immediately, cost reduction measures begin. Non-essential personnel will be terminated." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some faces crumpled, others turned pale. Her eyes scanned the crowd, hunting for weakness, for someone to blame. They landed on Jamal. And that's when he did the unthinkable. He raised his hand. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but low, "I think the problem isn't in the software integration. It's in the harmonic frequency calibration." The auditorium froze. 200 heads turned. Whispers swelled like static. In the front row, Klaus Müller leaned forward. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes sharpened with intrigue. Victoria blinked, first in surprise, then in fury. A janitor, challenging her. In front of the board. In front of investors. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Victoria's lips curved into something dangerous. An opportunity, cloaked in condescension. "All right," she said softly, stepping away from the podium. "Maintenance boy, show us what you've got." What she didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that Jamal Washington was not just a janitor. He was a mechanic's grandson, a listener of engines, a man who could hear what machines were trying to say. And everything was about to change. The auditorium hung in breathless silence. 200 employees frozen, watching the man they'd ignored for 3 years stand beneath the harsh white lights. Jamal's raised hand trembled only slightly, but his voice, steady, clear, unbroken, cut through the tension like a tuning fork through noise. "I think," he said again, The problem isn't in the software integration. It's in the harmonic frequency calibration. No one moved. The hum of ventilation filled the void, a mechanical heartbeat echoing his words. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Surprise flickered, then hardened into calculation. She'd just been handed a new game to play, and Jamal, unknowingly, had become her pawn. A slow smile crept across her face. "Interesting theory, Mr. Washington," she said, her tone syrupy and sharp. "Tell you what, if you can solve what my entire engineering division couldn't, you can keep your job, maybe even earn a promotion." Her gaze sharpened. "But fail, and you'll leave this building before sunset." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, half amusement, half disbelief. Somewhere in the back, a voice whispered, "He's the janitor," another snorted. "He probably doesn't even know what harmonic means." But Dr. Alina Rodriguez leaned forward, eyes glinting with curiosity. "Let him speak," she said, her Spanish accent crisp. "Sometimes truth hides in humility." Jamal swallowed hard. He felt the weight of every stare pressing against his skin. Yet behind the fear stirred something older, stronger, his grandfather's voice, echoing from another lifetime. "Engine's got a heartbeat, boy. You listen close, they'll tell you what's wrong." The room blurred. The suits, the marble, the screens, all faded, replaced by the scent of oil and sawdust, the low thrum of a working engine, and the warm summer air of Detroit, 1995. Cityscape Detroit, 1995. The garage on 8 Mile Road. The auto industry was bleeding out. Factories closed, men laid off, dreams rusting in driveways. But on the corner of 8 Mile and Gratiot, one small garage still pulsed with life. Inside, Samuel Washington, 72 years old, moved with patient purpose. His coveralls were stained with decades of work, his hands dark and scarred yet steady as a surgeon. The air smelled of grease and gasoline, but to Jamal, 12 years old, face pressed against the window, it smelled like destiny. "Come on in, boy," Samuel called without looking up. "Time you learned what real education looks like." Jamal pushed open the heavy door. Tools hung like instruments on the wall, each one polished by use. A radio crackled Motown through static. On the lift sat a '68 Mustang, engine guts exposed. "She's been declared dead 3 times, Samuel said, wiping his hands. "But a machine only dies when you stop listening." He placed Jamal's small palm on the metal block. The engine thrummed faintly, almost imperceptible. "Feel that?" Samuel asked. "That's her heartbeat. She's talkin', just gotta know her language." From that day on, the garage became Jamal's classroom. No textbooks, no chalkboards, just rhythm, resonance, and respect. Samuel taught him to read vibrations the way others read words, to diagnose by ear, by scent, by instinct. "An engine don't care about your color, son," he'd say, adjusting a carburetor with a gentle twist. "Don't care where you come from or what degree you hold. It only cares that you treat it honest." Week by week, lesson by lesson, Jamal learned how a misaligned gear could sound like a cough, how worn bearings hummed a mournful tune, how coolant leaks carried a sweet metallic scent. And beyond mechanics, Samuel taught survival. "World's gonna test you twice, cause of your skin," he warned, eyes hard with memory. "They'll assume you're half as smart, so you fix what they can't. Let your work be louder than their doubt." By 16, Jamal could strip an engine blindfolded. Community college professors would later marvel at the boy who solved equations with grease-stained fingers. But brilliance came second to duty. When Samuel's heart gave out under the hood of a Cadillac, Jamal held his hand as the old man whispered his final truth. "Respect the machine and yourself." The funeral overflowed. Mechanics, engineers, neighbors. Stories poured out like oil from a cracked pan. Samuel saving engines others buried, mentoring kids no one believed in. But legacy couldn't pay bills. The garage closed, tools sold, dreams deferred. Jamal inherited no fortune, only knowledge, intuition, and a promise to keep listening. Broken heart dreams deferred. Years rolled forward like tires on worn asphalt. Jamal graduated community college top of his class, professors urging him toward MIT, Georgia Tech, Stanford. But life demanded sacrifice. When his mother, Denise, was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, tuition turned into treatment. Chemo at $3,000 a session, insurance covering barely 60%. He worked 3 jobs, gas station nights, auto parts weekends, office cleaning before dawn. Homework scribbled on lunch breaks. Sleep stolen in library corners. Grades never slipped, pride never faltered. One professor, Dr. Martinez, a former MIT researcher, pulled him aside after a presentation on engine efficiency optimization. "You have a gift, Jamal. The world will recognize it someday." Jamal smiled, tired but resolute. "First, I gotta keep the lights on." University acceptance, letters gathered dust in a folder labeled someday. When Denise's remission finally came, the money was gone, and so was time. He took the first job that offered benefits, technical consultant, the posting said. Reality, mop, broom, bucket. But every night after cleaning floors, Jamal studied online courses in AI integration, automotive systems, harmonic resonance. His tiny apartment filled with salvaged parts and open textbooks. While others slept, he listened to engines, to silence, to possibility. And through every hardship, Samuel's voice endured. "Engines don't lie, boy. They just wait for someone who listens." The memory faded like steam off hot steel. Jamal blinked and the auditorium returned, 200 faces staring, some mocking, some curious. His heart pounded, steady as a piston. Victoria tilted her head, amused. "Well, Mr. Washington, you've interrupted my meeting. Do you intend to back up your theory, or should we get back to real engineers?" Dr. Rodriguez interjected. "Let him continue." Klaus Mueller folded his arms. "Ja, I will hear this." Jamal stepped forward, setting down his trash bags. "When you hear that engine run, you can feel it fighting itself. The AI and mechanics, they're out of sync. Built in metric, coded in imperial. It's like forcing 2 hearts to share one rhythm." A ripple passed through the engineers, recognition dawning too late. Victoria crossed her arms. "So you're saying our top-tier graduates missed a unit conversion?" Jamal met her gaze. "I'm saying no one listened long enough to notice." For a moment, silence reigned again. Not dismissive this time, contemplative, uneasy, electric. Dr. Rodriguez broke it. "Tomorrow morning," she said, standing, "we run a new test, his way." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Fine, but if this janitor wastes 1 more hour, he's gone." Jamal nodded. He had waited years for a chance, not revenge, not validation, just a fair listen. As the crowd dispersed, whispers trailed behind him, some mocking, some curious, 1 or 2 quietly hopeful. Back in the maintenance corridor, he paused beside his cart, hand resting on the worn handle, eyes closed. Through the walls, he could almost hear the engine breathing, strained, misaligned, waiting. Tomorrow, he'd let it speak. Morning broke over Silicon Valley in a haze of gold and glass. Tech Vanguard's tower shimmered against the dawn, 40 stories of ambition catching the first light. Inside, corridors once buzzing with doubt now hummed with anticipation. Today, the janitor would face the empire. Jamal arrived early. The building was quiet, its usual arrogance still asleep. He pushed his maintenance cart toward the boardroom, not with the shuffling steps of a cleaner, but with the calm stride of a craftsman returning to his workbench. When he entered, the air felt different, charged, expectant. Engineers clustered around the table, whispering nervously. Some avoided his eyes, others stared, curiosity winning over pride. At the head of the room stood Victoria Sterling, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The red of her heels caught the morning sun like drops of fire. To her right, Klaus Mueller and Dr. Elena Rodriguez conferred in hushed tones, clipboards ready. Jamal placed his toolkit on the table beside the engine. Not the company-issued one, but his own, each wrench polished, each screwdriver worn smooth by years of use. The same tools that once clinked in his grandfather's garage. "Mr. Washington," Victoria said, her voice cool, "you have 1 hour." 1 hour's plenty. Jamal replied softly. He pulled on his gloves, frayed leather, stained with history, and bent over the machine. The engine sat silent, its sleek housing reflecting his determined face. Around him, keyboards clacked, cameras recorded, breaths held. He began not by touching, but by listening. Head tilted, eyes closed. The faint hum of dormant circuits, the whisper of misaligned frequencies, the pulse of a system out of tune with itself. Every engine has a voice, Samuel's memory echoed. It'll tell you what it needs if you listen long enough. Jamal's fingers traced the seams between modules, feeling vibrations others ignored. Then, with deliberate care, he adjusted the calibration nodes, switching units, aligning parameters, translating metric rhythm into imperial harmony. Temperature sensors here, he murmured, pointing. They're reading off scale because the base constant's in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. That mismatch throws the AI feedback loop. Dr. Rodriguez leaned closer, fascination flickering in her eyes. He's right. That would create resonance instability. Klaus nodded once, lips pursed. A classic unit error, hidden in plain sight. For 40 minutes, Jamal worked in silence, tightening, recalibrating, coaxing cooperation from code and metal alike. Sweat beaded on his brow. The executives watched as if witnessing a surgeon revive a dying heart. Finally, he straightened. Let's wake her up. He stepped back. Fingers hovering over the control pad, he looked to Victoria. Permission to initiate. Her jaw clenched. Proceed. Jamal pressed start. A low hum filled the room. Lights along the engine flickered to life, blue chasing red across chrome. The machine shuddered once, then steadied. Digital readouts scrolled clean. 5 minutes. 10. 14 minutes, where it had always failed before, came and went, still running. At 15 minutes, the hum grew richer, smoother, like a choir finding perfect pitch. Air vibrated with resonance. No smoke, no sparks, only power. Gasps erupted. Applause followed. Even the skeptics leaned forward, eyes wide. Dr. Rodriguez clapped first. Magnifico, efficiency stabilized at 93%, exact projection. Klaus Mueller's stoic face cracked into a rare smile. Impressive, very impressive. Jamal exhaled slowly, the tension leaving his shoulders. He'd done it. The engine purred like a contented beast, alive, balanced, harmonious. But silence fell again when Victoria stepped toward him. Her heels clicked against marble, echoing authority. She stopped inches away, eyes glinting like steel. Well, she said softly, it seems our janitor has surprised us. Around them, whispers swelled. He fixed it. He actually did it. How did we miss that? Victoria's smile returned, thin, brittle. Congratulations, Mr. Washington. You've earned yourself another day on the payroll. Jamal met her gaze. With respect, ma'am, I didn't do it for the payroll. Her brow arched. No. He shook his head. I did it because it was broken, and because no one else was listening. The words hung heavy, truth cutting sharper than accusation. Some engineers lowered their eyes. Others nodded faintly, shame creeping in. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, hand extended. You have the ear of a master mechanic and the mind of an engineer. Tech Vanguard is lucky to have you. Jamal hesitated, then shook her hand. Thank you, ma'am. Klaus spoke next, his German accent clipped but warm. Autotech Bavaria could use men who hear machines so well. Perhaps we discuss opportunities later, yes. The room buzzed, whispers turning to excitement. Jamal, the janitor, fielding offers from Europe's top tech consortium. Victoria's expression faltered. For the first time, the Queen of Steel and Glass looked uncertain. Dr. Rodriguez turned to her. Ms. Sterling, talent like this should not be mopping floors. Victoria forced a smile. Of course, we'll reevaluate his position. Jamal gathered his tools, each piece sliding back into its slot with quiet finality. He looked around the boardroom, the same space where he'd been mocked, dismissed, invisible. Now every eye followed him. He felt no triumph, only calm satisfaction. He hadn't come to prove them wrong. only to prove his grandfather right. As he wheeled his cart toward the door, a voice called out, "Mr. Washington." It was Sarah Kim, one of the engineers who'd once looked away in embarrassment. She stepped forward, cheeks flushed. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you spoke up." He nodded. Sometimes all it takes is one voice. In the hallway, sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced like sparks. The city below stretched endless, alive, like an engine running in perfect tune. Sparkle's epilogue, The Symphony of Steel. Weeks later, Tech Vanguard announced its partnership with Autotech Bavaria. Headlines blazed, breakthrough in AI engine technology, efficiency records smashed. No article mentioned the janitor. But inside the company, stories spread about the man who fixed what the geniuses couldn't, about the quiet voice that saved $67 million. Jamal's nameplate changed. Jamal Washington, senior systems engineer. Yet every morning, he still arrived early, coffee in hand, greeting the cleaning crew by name. Humility, like harmony, once learned, never fades. In his new office, beside textbooks and circuit models, sat an old photograph. Samuel Washington in his grease-stained coveralls, smiling beside a 12-year-old boy holding a wrench too big for his hands. When stress rose and deadlines loomed, Jamal would rest a hand on that frame and whisper, "Still listening, Grandpa." Outside his window, self-driving trucks rolled down highways, engines singing in balanced rhythm, a symphony of steel born from one man's patience and one old lesson. Respect the machine, listen to its heartbeat, and never let anyone silence yours.